Within the wild colonial Americas, Catboy Larry has been destined for greatness and mischief. Being the eldest son of a wealthy Neko Ranch owner, Catboy Larry took command and kept order with the household chores shared among his younger siblings, learned from his father, Cat Dad Larry II. Times would not be easy in his life as years later his father would pass away, giving Catboy Larry the responsibilities of the Neko Ranch. During his time spent at the ranch, he would learn the ropes quickly of his duties. He learned to manage his workers efficiently and relay with faraway merchants to buy his deluxe catnip, since vendors nearby would price it far cheaper. He became proficient on horseback when on his long-distance travels back and forth, becoming swifter with every succession. Not every business venture was on horseback, as on a sail to Havana, Larry befriended another gentleman by the name of Jeff. The two bonded over how much they cherished fine suits and knocking over chinaware. Tragedy struck when, during the voyage, an assassin named Vincent tried to give Larry a lethal dose of ligma. Jeff, caught in the crossfire, was slain by this dreaded dead meme. The death of Larry's best and only trusted friend has forever scarred his mind. It had such a traumatic effect that would later alienate Larry from his peers for years to come. He knew Jeff for only 5 minutes. Years later, the French and Indian War has broken out, and Larry has bravely decided to take up arms against the French threat on the colonial border. Becoming a non-commissioned officer, Larry has spent his time with his soldiers training in rigorous firearm exercises. Day in and day out, they refined their reloading and aiming until it was Larry's turn to be sent off to the front lines. During the battles, the men performed admirable and were accustomed to the routine firing that required a calm head and steady hands. Unfortunately for Larry, by the end of the war, all his efforts were not recognized and were never provided a chance to earn a commission. This, and the fact that most British officers were staunch anti-catnip advocates, resulted in Larry's resigning from the army. Later, he married a catnip-addicted yet rich widow, whose inheritance would expand his domain by 5 times the amount, letting him become a local powerhouse in the colonies for catnip and catnip accessories. This also provided him the funds to liberate the colonies as a cat empire. Months after this, he was elected into congressional convention for unrelated reasons that he promised, such as less taxation on tea, representing the colonists, and other shenanigans. He used this and his fame and connections to acquire 1,000 Brown Bess muskets from one of the local British armories. This unfortunately increased the tensions between colonists and their overlord. These Brown Bess muskets are the staple standard of the British Army, and if trained enough with it, would be not only a devastating weapon, but also provide a good chance to stand on open ground against the British. Not too long after the new muskets were procured, Congress has rallied together to petition to King George III with a list of demands. The demands made were to not be taxed on matters where they were not allowed to send any representatives to debate, and for the repeal of intolerable acts such as the Stamp Act, Tea Act, and worst of all, the Catnip Act, all of which put high taxes for the goods. These fair terms were promptly denied, and the members of Congress were branded as traitors. Weeks after the news was spread of the British mobilizing an army to quell the Catboys and their newfound assembly, they made ready for war. Upon the outbreak of war, the British military has occupied a great number of strategic locations that would hamper our cause, with the populous city of Boston being their stronghold. Larry, now being appointed as a general to lead this rebellion, has gathered 2 decently trained divisions, the first being from Pennsylvania and the second from Virginia. He has gathered his men and headed on the march to Connecticut to meet with this occupying British force. Upon his arrival, it appeared that the situation is far worse than he initially anticipated. To his northern flank, the British have occupied Fort Stevens, as in the southeast, the rest of Connecticut has been occupied already. To the west, there lies Boston, fortified with thousands of British soldiers, and Salem, to the north of it. All of it under the British thumb. The capital of New Hampshire, though, Portsmouth, remains under our colonial control, but its garrison is abysmal in size and is isolated from the rest of our army. After assessing the situation, it appears that the force of about 1,000 soldiers is not nearly enough to overcome his enemies. If he's going to win in this theater, he's going to need more men and a base to operate from. Nearby along the dirt path lies his answer of the allied town of Leicester. There, it may suit his needs for the time being, as being placed in between multiple hostile locations, it would provide a perfect staging ground to intercept enemy movement. Concluding his thoughts and deciding on a strategic location, Larry orders his marching legions there for some respite in preparation for the upcoming conflict. On the way to the town, he sends word to its town mayor, calling for a division of troops to be mustered. The mayor obliged, but to Larry's surprise, the men that were steadily gathered the following days were not trained regulars like his men. They were scrappy and rugged militiamen, untrained and equipped with whatever they can get their hands on. The leading officer of this new division would be a man by the name of Samson Byrne. During the days spent in Leicester, General Larry used the able-bodied manpower there to expand the ranks of his more experienced troops as well, hoping to maximize the potential out of his elite units. This effort would take several days though, and time is not something that is on his side. To make things worse, a small band of patriots have secured a small cache of weapons and ammunitions in the small town of Concord, and Larry has received reports recently of British forces already mobilizing to obtain this important cache. Along with the news of the British forces moving to capture the weapons at Concord, there is an additional weapons cache owned by the British at Providence. This issue would further make the campaign difficult, as it constantly supplies to British forces at Boston with weapons and ammunition, fueling their war effort. Larry would spend his time at the town making use of the Brown Bess muskets he obtained during his political career to rearm his men, making their shots all the more deadly. Despite being tied down with expanding his elite units, Larry has believed that despite Lexington and Providence are being critical points, they can easily be recaptured and become pointless later. Thinking outside the box, Larry wanted to look north. To his flank lies Fort Stevens, what seems like a sizable fortification and a perfect staging ground to strike at either Portsmouth or Larry's headquarters. This strategic point cannot stand in his campaign. Taking Samson Byrne under his command with about 550 men, Larry heads out to probe the defenses of the fort, if not take it. And after the discovery of the fort being undermanned with about 1 unit of infantry, Larry ordered the men to storm the fort. The defenders, perhaps lacking morale, or figuring their chances of success are slim, decided to head tail and run back to Boston. As the British fled, General Larry, now Commander-in-Chief from a recent promotion, decided it would be a waste of time to chase the smaller British unit and leave the fort undefended. He ordered Samson to garrison the fort and await further orders while riding back to the situation at Leicester. Upon entering his base, he has taken notice of a wave of new volunteers that were sent from Congress to support their new Commander-in-Chief. They are rugged and poorly equipped, similar to Samson's division, but help is help nonetheless, especially with the time being of the essence. Larry has quickly rallied all of his available hands and has set out for Concord. On the outskirts of Leicester, he has received an important report of yet another patriotic militia, hailing from Massachusetts. With the release of these extra units, he decided to send them out on a diversionary attack to capture Providence. This multi-pronged assault will help prevent any form of retreat from the British heading south to disrupt their supply lines by land. After a day of marching to Concord, the first Battle of Independence was about to commence.